Hi everybody, welcome to day one of my 3-day live series in which I am coming to you with all the tea. But really I'm just coming to you with some fun sort of notes behind my journey of becoming an author. Maybe just sharing what I've learned along the way, and I'm hoping that this series reaches the right people, especially people who maybe one day want to also write their books, or you're a creative who want to get inspiration to go deeper into your journey. I love talking about these things because I started out not knowing that I could get here one day. And just to preface this live series, I also want to say that even though I'm sharing my experience and what has worked for me, I don't want to assume that I know everything. So that's not where I'm coming from. I have pedigree from Columbia. That's where I got my MFA. And I've definitely learned a lot from my programs and my training, as well as my experience being a published author with my novel, The Napper, which if you follow me, you know that it's officially releasing this Friday. So a couple of caveats. First of all, again, I do not presume that I know everything. I'm only sharing this with the people who are interested in my story, because I know some of you have reached out to me personally and you're curious about how I went from, like I said in my title, like almost quitting writing to becoming a published author. So if you can stay and watch this leisurely for maybe half an hour, grab a cup of tea, get settled, and I'll make sure to hit some important markers in my journey. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I'm not trying to get away from you. So let's see. So to get to where I am today, a published author, I feel very good about myself as a creative, as a writer, and I feel like I'm finally at this good place in which I'm not only more productive than ever, but I have I would describe it as like a healthy sense of how I want my career to plan out as a writer, and also how I see different aspects of my identity, as well as my experiences, not just with writing my book, but really in all aspects of my life that involve creative energy, creativity, all that coming together. And I want to start off with that because that has not always been my experience. Just to give you a context, 5 years ago, I quit writing. I silently quit writing. Even before then, in my final years of college, I had become tired of always producing sort of this cookie cutter short form fiction. I felt like I was always writing for this imaginary sort of set of people who are gonna judge me on my writing. So think about it like I was always trying to please somebody, whether that be like a writing professor, or I was trying to really, I hate to say it, but like be someone who was imitating. So I would try to copy paste, or not copy paste because that would be plagiarism, but what I mean is try to copy the voice and almost the style of writing of my favorite authors. Sometimes not even my favorite authors. I would almost imitate the style of writers who I thought were prestigious, who I thought were better than me. Again, if you're here for the long haul for the next half hour, I will get back a lot to sort of some of my preconceptions about who I needed to be in order to write. And a lot of the pattern that you'll see throughout my story is I was someone who, because of my upbringing and because of my conditioning, thought that I had to be a certain way. So that also sort of seeped into my creative journey. And I thought that in order to be a successful writer, I had to play by the book. I had to play by the rules. I had to comply to the expectation, back when I was in school of my teachers, or even when I was out of school, I still like held myself back so much now that I think about it, because I thought that to be respectable, you had to write, seriously, and not saying that I don't take my craft seriously, but a lot of the writers that I admire in school, were the classics or the super high literary fiction, which is funny because I am publishing my first book, which is a literary fiction. So I'm not putting down anything or anybody or any genre. I'm just saying that like when you're trained in a very narrow field, or when you're trained to be sort of super efficient or super like expert in like one narrow trajectory, it can very easily become also very suffocating. And I think that's why, like, doing college, and by the end of it, I almost was like, you know what, I love reading, but maybe writing isn't for me, because I'm exhausted every time I'm in the writing workshop. All I'm trying to do is to get the approval of my teacher. And if you're a people pleaser, or used to be a people pleaser like me, you know that even when we're creative and we know we have this calling and we know we have like original ideas, somehow when we're in the context of other people or in a group setting, it seems like it's so easy to be pulled in with the current and with the tide. Just grab a sip of water. So that basically was my story, and on top of all of that, I know that my my story is also defined by a journey of healing. So in my case, I had a lot of sort of patterns of trauma that prevented me from being consistent. And this is something that I think I have really started to even become more aware of today, now that I've had so much time spent with experts who are in like mental health, therapists, but also learning from like books, and also from my own training as a trauma-informed coach, which taught me that like some of these patterns of like, I would start writing and I would have a game plan, and I would be like writing for like, nonstop for a week. Then next week I would feel like almost like a detached, like a whole different person, and I would decondition myself from, I would disassociate myself from like this whole plan that I had. And that was pretty much a pattern that I have for a long time. And if you're in like the trauma-informed space or a professional, you know that like that is a very common exhibition of trauma patterns, which is when, even though it doesn't make sense why you would have a goal and then work on it and then almost like distance yourself from the goal. But that was almost my pattern. I had a lot of fawning, which is when what I told you about in terms of like trying to please people, which again, if you're a creative, you're meant to be creating like your own original blueprint in the world. You're not meant to be like copying people, even like, not saying like you're plagiarizing, but even when you're trying to be in a well-intentioned way, like imitating others, we're taught that that's learning. And again, some of it is definitely learning, and there's some very beautiful exercises that help you do that, but it can get to a certain stage in your journey in which all you're doing is replicating someone else's own imprint, and that's their own original style, and it might actually prevent you from learning about what is it that you want to say, what is it that you want to write about, and how to set yourself not only apart from other writers or other people, but honestly just how to carve your own lane, and how to honor what you're here to say, how to honor what you're planning to write in this lifetime. And that's something that I would talk about going forward with my journey. So where am I? So I was like, I'm done with writing. I am tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. At least that was like the mind chatter. So you can see that it's also a sign of like a lot of negative thinking, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of feeling like I'm not good enough. And all those, again, can be symptoms of, conditioning, because we live in a society that loves perfectionism. We love overnight success stories. But when it comes to like building this like slow, steady, even like kind of soft, nurturing way of being, it's not as much talked about, and we're not really taught about these things in schools or in professional settings. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you today, because I want to emphasize how much, at least for me, it's been so tremendously helpful, not just to like do the practical thing, like have your book writing plan, have your writing plan, and have like a writing schedule, but also like learning about, what patterns do I have around stopping and continuing, what kind of like rabbit hole patterns of thinking do I get myself into that makes me feel so negative and almost like brings me back to that freeze state in which I'm literally frozen and I can't do anything. Being aware of certain people who set me back because they're saying that what I write isn't, commercial enough, or what I write isn't what they want to write. And where in my journey have I let myself being deterred because someone else in my writing program said something, or a mentor didn't get my vision, so he tried to change or direct my path. So realizing that like it's not just about can I sit down and write, which, let me make a guess, like if you're watching this to where I am right now, you're probably a very intelligent individual. You probably even maybe have an idea to write a book yourself, but something almost always seems to get in the way. At least that was my story. And I also want to say that, I have the privilege of being born at the right time and with the right circumstances. So already you would think that like I'm already ahead of a lot of folks who have like real life, problems. But even then, even when like, I had stability, I had, a roof over my head, I had food to eat, there was this like gripping sensation in my body, and even like a lot of mental chatter that told me that like you really can't do this. You could, there's no way for you to write a book. And in my case, because I'm not a native English speaker, I'm Vietnamese born and raised, there were like these additional layer that like made me feel like there was no way I could do this. So let me list out some of those reasons. I am English as a second language speaker, so like I'm like, oh, like if I write a book and it's like hundreds of pages, like people catch all these mistakes. Or I would say, I have depression, I have some anxiety, there's no way that I could stick to like a strict writing plan. Or I would say, I'm very shy, I'm very introverted, there's no way I can like put myself out there in that way. Because if you think about like writing a book is also like putting a piece of your soul out there for the whole world to see, which in my case, thankfully, I'm a fiction writer. Again, I have to remind myself that, and other people that, because some people imagine that like The Napper is a memoir, which it is not, thankfully, even if it has some detail inspired from my real life. But what I'm trying to say is, the more you can stick with, okay, what are my patterns, and almost become like an observer of your patterns, that can give you like a head start on like, okay, what are some of the areas in which I'm wobbly, and areas that I can like go back in and work on. So like I said, for me it was really like this crazy like body sensation, which now I know it's from my trauma patterns of freezing and fawning. So in the trauma-informed space, freezing is when something triggers you so much that you are like in this like state of like you can't, not necessarily that you can't move, but you're blocked from taking that action, and you're blocked from getting to where you want to go. So I experienced a lot of that due to my own traumatic symptoms or my trauma from the past. And then, like I told you already, fawning, which is when I was like asking myself, like, how can I make other people happy? How can I write things that people like? Instead of focusing on myself and what I wanted to write about. And also like what made me feel good, maybe for you it's not necessarily a good idea to go to an MFA program because you don't like structure and you don't like having a huge course load. Now that I'm out of my MFA, I love reading stories about people who literally, they have other professions, they're nurses, they're doctors, they're musicians, and they find time to write. They don't need a huge curriculum. And at the same time, for people who love school and love academia, maybe going to that traditional route is your way to becoming a published author. So once again, I have to reiterate this because I know people online can, forget to read things behind the lines. Hi, Taylor. So I was just talking about how it's not for everybody to go into a traditional writing program if you're not meant for that path. But there's so many options to becoming a published author. Like the more I'm in this space, the more I'm like, wow, like it is a more opening, welcoming space than you can ever imagine, especially when you live in the era of like self-publishing, which I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about, or in my case, indie publishing, which is where it's like the twin sister of self-publishing, but I do have like a team and a very, very, very small publishing house. Shout out to Eponymous Books. But this is the time. Like if you wanted to write a book, like this is the time. There has never been a more comfortable, loving, gentler time for you to be a published author. Like I cannot think of any other moment in history in which it's been so easy for people of color, for marginalized identity folks, for women, for people like me who literally, used to like not be able to read Twilight. Like I remember when I was 12 and my dad like bought me like the Twilight series from like the airport because I used to live in Vietnam and we don't have access to a lot of English books at that time. And I read like the first page, this is so funny, of Twilight, and I honestly could not read the page without like underlining a bunch of words because I could not understand the words. In Vietnam, I was going to a French school, so my English wasn't that great. To now, if you fast forward like 15 years later, I'm having my first book published in English and with the credentials of a Columbia MFA. So really, this is the best time if you're hoping to be a published author, or not even like a fancy schmancy author, but just having a space, like having a medium, an outlet for you to share your voice. Really, yay, thank you, Taylor. Really, this is the best time to be. And the thing that I love about this is, again, I literally went to school with like very, very, very established authors. I'm talking about like Pulitzer winning authors. And now that I'm out of that, world, I am a reader who reads everything. So even if your book is not like in a big genre that you see on like the New York Times, and you have a calling to write, like honestly, there's a niche for every single space. So I know besides writing, I'm also a coach. So a lot of my friends are also educators, mentors, coaches, business owners, and you guys, like, we also want your story, your voice, your lessons. And there has never been a better time than now to do it, because we're hungry for voices from different communities. We're hungry for voices from different, marginalized identities. And for example, like, I cannot tell you how surprised I was, because I, still came to writing my book with some of the limiting belief or self-reservations about who I was or my abilities. But from the feedback from my early readers, people have messaged me saying that they've cried like 3 times reading my book. Like people who said, did not know that like there was, an Asian woman that write about my experiences so transparently and so honestly. So like if you have a calling to write your book, like you should do that, not only for yourself, and I think you should always do things because you want to first and foremost, but because you cannot imagine the people and the lives that you'll change if you decide to go down that route. So the more that I start to get aware of my own patterns around starting and stopping, telling myself I can, and then next day being like, nah, I can't. The more I start to work around, okay, like where is the exact like catalyst that made me feel that way? And for me, at that time in my life, it was because I did not have a lot of social support. I did not, and it's not just about hiring the right mentor, even though that's beautiful as well, but it's about being in an environment that supports your creative journey. Surround yourself with other artists and writers. For example, like I grew up not being surrounded by a lot of artists or writers, even though one of my parents does write poetry. You're taught to go at things in a very linear fashion. You're supposed to, for in my case, like if I had a master's, you're supposed to do the next thing, which was to get a PhD. You're supposed to be a professor. So I always felt a lot of pressure to conform to those expectations, and I once upon the time also thought that I was going to be like an English professor, which I have a lot of amazing, beautiful friends who are definitely going to be amazing professors in like the traditional academic sense. But with my ADHD brain and my trauma patterns, it's just not a good way to live my life. And I'm just too spontaneous. And I love like too much of pop culture to go down that route. So just knowing yourself and working not just around your trauma patterns, but also like learning like, how can I make like incremental daily changes to make writing as easy as possible, not just from like scheduling things in your schedule, which we all can do, but can I follow people that talk about writing from this very soft place? So what I've learned is that like I'm not the right mentor, because I'm also a book coach. I'm not the right mentor for a lot of people who go at things in a very aggressive manner, but I'm the right mentor for people who, you have some trauma in your past. Maybe you have depression. I myself have some depression, but you know how to work around all of those blind spots. You know how to create this soft landing for yourself. You know how to create this cozy world in which you're free to explore any ideas that you have. Like, you're not going to stop yourself from writing anything or from doing anything because it's never been done before or people don't do it that way. So it's funny because I was having a call with a friend today, and we were talking about how I think in the past, like I used to judge myself so much. Honestly, you can't imagine how much I used to put myself down for the content I put even on social media, because I thought, like, who am I to speak about these things? Like, who am I to teach people how to write their books? Like, that is just crazy. But I'm the right mentor for the right people who know that like there's a better way than the hustle culture, that you can write your book from this soft, sweet, like gentle place. And honestly, if you were to come here in my apartment right now, that's how I've structured my life. Writing is no longer this chore that I have to do. Although, sometimes when you have writing sprints, it could feel like work. I'm not saying that like there's no place for discipline, but the more that you can incorporate like these feelings of like ease and like just breathe and like just make yourself like so comfortable in whatever space you have for your creative writing, your creative pursuit, the better. And a tip that really worked for me, again, this might not work for everybody, always take things with a grain of salt, only do things that work for you, is surround yourself with community that are very supportive of your creative pursuits. So whether that be like joining a creative writing community at your community college, and online programs. There's so many great online programs, online classes, but also find, people who say that like, writing a book is fun and writing a book can like bring you so much pleasure. And writing a book can be like can be you like exploring your thoughts and ideas, and also like find friends online that can help you do that if you're not in like a traditional writing program. So for me, like what has changed the most in the last 5 years and what has allowed me to like have so much more fun in my book writing journey is just to find the sweet spot between, okay, I do have to do uncomfortable things. Like I do actually have to write. I do actually have to revise. I do actually have to like, if you get to like the publishing stage, hire editors, proofreaders, and also find that like soft, sweet, like beautiful zone with like, celebrating myself. Like if I have like written like 500 words, or even like if you're just starting out, like if you just write like 5 pages, like can you make yourself like so happy and so like celebrating that moment? Like I think when I first started out, even like being able to write like a couple of pages like at a month's time, like even that for me was so huge, especially from my background as someone with some trauma, and like I told you in the beginning of the call, like with my freeze and fawn thing that I have going on. Even like writing like so little at the beginning, like I made myself feel like I was doing the best thing in the world at that point. I made myself feel like I celebrated myself internally. Of course, I didn't do this publicly. Like I like won the Nobel Prize. And I think the more that you can make yourself like right for those things, like the more you'll be able to like to withstand the years. For some people, like writing their books can take years. Just like it took me with the Napper, like at least 4 years from like when I wrote my first draft to like revision to like all this stuff. And I think that if you can just take away from this call that like it's not just about the routine, it's not just about like getting to a prestigious program, but it's also about like what do I need to take care of myself, and whether that be like just having like this sweet spot, like maybe an hour a week, an hour a month, on the weekend, like get yourself a cup of tea, or like bring yourself to the beach if you have that luxury. These little things like seem stupid. I know that's what I told myself in the beginning, but it all adds up. And so this is part of the call in which I want to say that like I'm having like a free email course, and so it's all email. It's all about how to write your book in a year. So if you like my story, and if you want to sort of bring my own expertise in writing my book and transfer that into your own creative practice, you have to be signing up for this course. I give you all the mindset tips, all the habits that you need, all these like subtle thinking shifts that would help you go from like, I hate this stuff, this is annoying, like writing my book sucks, or like writing books is like for boring people, or for people who like are very type A, which even though I thought I was type A, but I'm like super type B or even type C. So I designed this course for lazy people like me, for people with maybe some trauma, so people who can't write every day. Like I would kill myself. Okay, take that back. But I would like not be able to handle that level of pressure. So I created this program, this free email course. Again, it just sent straight to email over like I think 7 days. And it all teaches you like what you need to do if you're someone who relates to my story or my patterns. And it will really help you shift from like, oh my gosh, writing is struggle, writing is hard, or writing is lonely, to like, how can I make this experience super fun? How can I make this experience super pleasurable? So yeah, that was 30 minutes of me blabbing on, but I hope you can take some little nuggets from this. I will also send the replay to YouTube, and I will email that to all my email folks. So you should also get on my email list if you haven't already. But I hope that you will take this cue as a way to sign up for the free book writing in 1 year course, because it's amazing. And I'll see you tomorrow. I forgot the exact topic, but I'll just give you more details about writing the Napper and further things that you can take away. Thank you so much, Taylor. I can't wait for you to read it. Yay! The book launch is officially August 23rd. And again, I have to reiterate this. I'm an indie author. I don't have a big marketing team. Any share that you do, literally, if you can just reshare any post about the Napper, ideally with the cover. On the day of, I also share like a post about like buy the napper now, whatever, and then if you can just share that and tag me and share that to your network on social, it will help me so much. Like for small people, I am small. For small authors like me, like every share really helps because again, like, yeah, I don't have a big marketing people behind me, and so the more, if you can just like get your own copy and then be like, hey, to your friend, like, hey, like, have you read this, you know, if you think about someone who likes the book, that will help me so much. I cannot thank you enough. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.